Let us now pray. Oh God, we do thank you that you have called us to this place this day. You have given us a new day to be in love with you, to serve you, and to walk with you. We thank you for the awesome responsibility you have given us to be your faithful followers. And with that, we know that we are called to be your servants. We thank you this day for Scott Steiner, for his word to us about the ministry and the mission of your church in this world. So we ask that you continue to bring faithful people to serve and to be a part of your kingdom. Open our hearts and minds this day to the way that you would speak to us, that we would be truly inspired and led to be faithful servants of yours, both this day and forevermore. Amen.
All right. Good morning, guys. Good morning, everybody. Great group here. Great group. Well, I am thrilled that weeks ago when we were talking about who to have as our next speaker, that God brought to my mind the name of the gentleman we have here this morning. Our speaker hails from the West Coast originally, California, and is a graduate of Fresno State. He made his way across the country in various roles as national sales executive representative for companies like Kodak, Siemens, Fujitsu. Scott and his lovely wife and their daughter live in Dunwoody in the Winter Hall neighborhood. Scott and I were fortunate enough to meet quite a few years ago. Our wives have been involved in different Bible studies and women's groups over the years, and our ladies signed us up for a all-day Saturday marriage retreat with Mark Gungor, who does a great program. If you haven't heard about it, Laugh Your Way to a Great Marriage. So that's where Scott and I first met. Scott, just, you'll hear, God has led him on a great walk to a great place of passion and ministry here in Atlanta at City of Refuge. I want to just share, I told Scott, he spoke to our Sunday school class a few years ago, and at the end, he handed out a Bible verse, and it's a decal. I'd stuck it on my previous car, and I felt bad when I switched to a new car because it was stuck right below the speedometer. But 1 Samuel, chapter 26, verse 6. And Scott can probably elaborate a little more on the meaning and significance of it, but it always stuck with me, and I'm glad I put it where I did. But if y'all aren't familiar, and I'm not a Bible scholar, but David's out in the wilderness. Saul is chasing him and pursuing him, and Saul and 30,000 of his soldiers camp for the night. And David, knows where he is and goes, I'm going to go down into the camp and basically confront Saul, seek him out. And he says, who will go with me? And I think it's Abishai says, I will go with you. And that's what 1 Samuel 26:6 is. I will go with you. We often think of I will go with you as God, Jesus walking with us. But I think this exemplifies Scott. Abishai says, here, I will go with another, let's say, mortal man. Obviously, his stature is more than mortal, but into an uncomfortable place, into a battle, into a tough situation. And Scott and what he's done and what City of Refuge does exemplifies that. Men, individuals walking with others through and into some very difficult times, and for coming out on the other side with some great things. But Scott Steiner, we are delighted to have him speak today and look forward to your story. Welcome, Scott.
Good. All right, let's jump out with a video. I think, is it Mark that can play that? Just to give you kind of a level setting of the City of Refuge campus itself. Here we go. Oh, can't hear the video.
Could you guys hear that?
No, we can't. Yeah.
All right, hold on. Let me start it over. Let's try this again.
My name is Nicole Walters, and today I'm in the historic West Side. Now, this is one of the most proud and historically rich neighborhoods in all of Atlanta. But it's also a neighborhood that's faced a lot of challenges. And that's where City of Refuge comes in. They're here providing opportunities to local residents every single day. I can't wait to tell you more. This is City of Refuge. City of Refuge has been on this campus for over 20 years, and they've been serving the community in 4 areas. Now, studies have shown these areas are a must if you want lasting transformation. There's housing, job training, youth development, and health and wellness. Now, all these areas are required to make sure that people really receive their transformation and change their lives. And City of Refuge is doing exactly that. There's a lot going on out here, but I want to take you inside for a closer look. Come on. Eden Village is one of the most special places here at City of Refuge. This is a safe place to sleep, something that a lot of people haven't experienced and what brings them here. But it's more than that. It's also an opportunity to connect, to get a case manager, evaluation, and access to the health and wellness and job training resources that you deserve, but never really experienced. So yeah, it's a safe place to sleep. But for some, it's actually their first home. As a mom, I know how important it is to have a great summer program, after school program, and education for your kids. And City of Refuge provides all of those for kids from preschool all the way through 12th grade. And they do all of that while the moms are getting nurtured and taking advantage of the job training resources. It's tremendous. And it's part of that 360 solution that actually makes a difference. Walking through the campus, I couldn't believe that I landed at an auto shop. But this is one of the feature programs of the job training program here at City of Refuge. Between culinary arts and nursing assistant programs, these students become some of the most sought after members of the workforce because of the skills that they're learning at City of Refuge every single day. Guys, Cassandra's bringing out the good stuff. You know the power of a good meal. And at City of Refuge, over 1,000 meals a day are served to the community and the residents. This smells good. And food's only part of it. City of Refuge feeds the mind, body, and soul. Let's learn more. The medical clinic here on the campus of City of Refuge provides full medical, dental, vision, and mental health resources to over 700 members of the community every single month. That's how you make an impact, and they're doing it real time right here.
As you walk through the gates at City of Refuge, you can feel God's presence here on these 8 acres every single day. You gotta come visit because they're expanding, they're growing, and we all get to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. Worked out great. Well, good morning. And thank you for that introduction, Michael. You know, it was probably, I want to say a year ago, but probably maybe a year and a half ago, and I had the opportunity to sit down and really connect with your Sunday school class. A couple things though, when I come on the campus here is I see Wiley's name on the billboard out there, and we got married here 27 years ago. So it's a special place for myself and my wife Lisa. But when I came to your Sunday school class that morning, I'm walking around and there's a really nice lady that came up to me and she said, "Oh, Sunday school class is upstairs." And she pointed to the elevator. She says, "Oh, we have an elevator to take you up." And I realized, oh my gosh, I look like a really old guy. So today I wore sneakers. So when I come in, I'm like, okay, I'm not that old guy. So a little bit of background, but let me take you back. It's always helpful to see our campus, right? But when I talk about City of Refuge and where we're located, and it's great to really though, take a step back and really talk about our founder, Bruce Deal. And really 24 years ago, we'll celebrate 24 years of being a nonprofit in the inner city of Atlanta, but it was really a short-term assignment. So Bruce's story is really, really compelling. He's a pastor by trade and he had a short-term assignment, and that was to really connect with the church family on 14th Street. So Bruce, moved temporarily to the inner city to help that church out, but to really come along that church family and find new homes, right? Find a new church family because they were going to sell that property. And so the goal and the mission of that church was to really come alongside that church family and serve them well, but find them new places to worship. And but a unique thing starts to happen. That unique thing happens is that the church started to grow, but with really a compelling, cool part of the community. People in need, right? Ladies coming to Bruce and saying, "Hey, I want to get out of life," meaning that they're prostitutes and they want to get out of the life of hooking and stripping, and said, "Hey, can you help me on that journey?" Bruce found a way to say yes. People coming to Bruce and the family and saying, "Hey, we're homeless. We're looking for a place to stay." And the Deal family is finding a way to say yes. And so the City of Refuge really was birthed out of that need. And so the church starts to grow. And Bruce tells a story that all of a sudden he looks one day at his right front and says, "Hey, I think we've been called by God. We're supposed to be here and here full time." So the City of Refuge really began 24 years ago, and that kind of what I'll say humble beginnings. But it was never a plan of Bruce Deal's to start a nonprofit and to really necessarily focus on the inner city, but the vision and the mission was born. So as you walk on our campus, we've been on that campus that really is 8 acres, 5 acres under roof. So to give that kind of scale, it's fun to see that, but it's really like 6 football fields magically knit together. And you'll hear a term a lot in the City of Refuge about collective impact. And really that's a fancy name for just the community coming together to be able to provide pathways to opportunity for families and community in needs that not only sometimes are looking for a second chance, they're really looking for that first chance. So to give you kind of a bearing where we're located, we're about 15 miles right here from our Dunwoody community, but about 1.5 miles from the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So that's part of that town that you probably never turn left on. And it's kind of that area like when all of a sudden, the sights and sounds in your car are the ones that all of a sudden you hit the locks, right? It's all of a sudden the water boys come up to your car. It's like, where are we? We're not in Dunwoody anymore, right? But then a magic happens when you come on our campus, and really it's taking that next step towards light, hope, and transformation. And that all happens on our campus. So if we took a walk right around our campus, those 8 acres, 5 acres under roof, what that looks like when we talk about wraparound services, when we talk about one-stop shop, it starts out really with housing. And somebody said it really well the other day. When people talk about City Refuge, a lot of people know City Refuge, they're a shelter. And then they get on our campus and they go, oh, this is not a shelter. There's so much more to what's going on here in the inner city of Atlanta. So it's really a shelter, I'd say some days with a game plan. And what I mean by that is the ladies will arrive on our campus, and they know minimally they'll be with us for a 6-month journey. So they don't need to worry about where the next place is going to be. So the next place is City Refuge, at least for that 6 months. And so that journey looks like meeting with a case manager that sits down and intently looks at, where they're currently at, what are the next steps, and how we can come along that journey with them. On our campus, we have a vocational training center, and I tell my buddies, I'm like, it's like Google, but cooler. And they're like, Scott, there's no way. And then they come on campus, as you can see, and they go, oh my gosh, this is Google, but cooler. And then they walk across and they see our Napa Auto Training Center. And I got to be really careful. As Michael mentioned, I grew up in Northern California. So when I say we have a Napa Center on campus, they think I'm making wine. And I'm like, no, we're not making wine, but we're changing lives and being on that journey. And another key part is just health and wellness, right? Especially be it like for COVID or just staying well on your journey towards life transformation. Where do you go to get well? And as you can imagine what it's like when you tell someone, hey, here's a MARTA bus pass, head up a couple blocks, couple miles, and to see a counselor, to see a case manager, to see health and wellness. Well, you run out of juice pretty quickly, right? So just the magic of everything being on one campus is really, really critical on taking that next step. So running campus, we have Mercy Care. And then part of our health and wellness is our culinary arts program and our 180 Cafe. And any given year, we'll serve about 365,000 meals. So that's residents on campus, some of the people in the community, and then students going through a vocational track. And then we have our health and wellness component is our youth development. So literally from diapers to diplomas, we serve that on our campus. So last year at the Bright Futures Academy, we have enrolled 95 students. And of that, 20 senior graduates. All of them had college options. Some of them took vocational tracks, some of them took military, but all of them had college options as far as associated with that. So that gives you kind of a backdrop of the City of Refuge. I'll back up a little bit of my story and my short-term assignment at City of Refuge. So I've really come from the high-tech field and really what I'd call more corporate America as far as the background on that. I was ready to transition into a new role with a team in Birmingham. And so I had about a 90-day gap right there that I had kind of a mini sabbatical. Reached out to Bruce Deal, one of the board members, and I said, hey, Bruce, I don't know what you got going on right now at City of Refuge, but if you need any of my skill sets, I'd make myself available. So I got a call a couple of days later from Bruce, and he said, hey, why don't you come on out? I want to show you something. So that Google But Cooler Center was formerly a basketball court and was formerly a warehouse. And before that, they joked that they had rats the size of dachshunds running around there. So we do a lot of renovation from the inside out. So Bruce showed me the new vocational training center, and he said, hey, we have a ribbon cutting, really looked at about December 6th. And with some of your project management skills, can you come alongside our team and help it out? I said, great. Well, something really changed. Day 2 of that, come home and my wife looked at me and said, "How's it going?" She goes, I go, "This is the most fun I've ever had in my life." I go, "This team is incredible, but the mission and the vision of where they're going is just, it's blowing me up every day." So again, we're going down the path that it was a short-term assignment. And Bruce gave me a call and said, "Hey, can you pop by my office a little bit?" And so he came by and he said, "Hey, just want to know, I know you're about ready to start your new career in Birmingham." And he said, "Would you consider, joining the team?" And so I got to that meeting and called my wife, Lisa, and she's in tears. And I said, what's up? She goes, "This has been the prayer. It's just a clear path if there's a door opening there." And so we prayed about it and called Bruce back and sat down with Bruce and said, "Hey, love to be a part of your team." So every day is, when I say just a complete joy. It's amazing to be alongside a team, again, walking alongside that journey, to really providing really pathways of opportunity. And I think what's changed most in my life in regard to the journey at City Refuge is that we are not the hero at all in the journey. And when I say we, I mean just talking about, people love the Bruce Steele story, right? The pioneer, the cowboy that comes in and rolls up and moves his family of 5 daughters into the inner city. And Bruce talks about how many times he's been broken into and the fist fights and knife fights and being in court. But really what changed your life is just realizing the community, that collective impact of coming together, brothers and sisters in Christ, just loving on each other and finding a pathway. So that could be anywhere from a donor, right? A first-time experience at City Refuge, a volunteer, to really families that come to us really kind of looking for that next step. And what's been powerful is just all of a sudden in this magical campus of a place where it doesn't feel like people are less than, to just as an area of opportunity of being able to ignite new opportunities in that step together. So one of my buddies jokes every time I see him, he says, "I still can't figure it out." He says, "When you're doing corporate America and you sold some cool technology, you never invited me in, right? You never said, 'Hey, come by my office. I got to show you this demo,' right?" He says, "But every week you're calling me and saying, 'Hey, Scott,' or I'm calling him and saying, 'Hey, John, you got to come on campus. Something really cool coming out. We have a graduation. We have, resume writing. We've got, this going on here at campus.'" So it's a place that we want to invite, not the community in, not only the community of 30314, but the community of Dunwoody, the community of Atlanta, the community of Cobb, right? It's so something magical about rolling up your sleeves and just doing life together. So that's kind of the story of City of Refuge and kind of on our journey now. So it's always asked of us, like, what's next? What's next on our journey? Because our footprint right now, when you walk through the vocational training, a lot of people ask us, what does COVID look like? What does that look like at the City of Refuge? And it's been a challenging year, but it's also been a really awesome year for us. We actually had 3 ribbon cuttings throughout the year. One of it, part of on our campus is we serve anti-trafficking with a nonprofit called House of Cherith. And so we've got close to 50 ladies on campus that have kind of made that decision. Hey, I want to get out of life and I need help taking that next step. So we launched what we call Mommies and Me. One of the challenges that programming around anti-trafficking is that it's more focused really on women, but not necessarily the children. And a lot of these ladies have multiple kids. And so the trauma associated with that whole family experience, we're coming alongside the whole family on that. So we launched the Mommies and Me program. The other one, probably not a lot of guys in the room know Fabric, but a lot of them, if we got home and asked our wives or our girlfriends about Fabric, they'd be like, "Yeah, I know what Fabric is." So Fabric is really kind of a high-end boutique in the Atlanta area. Dana Spinola, who has just a really heart for the community and heart for ladies, opened up a kind of a shop on campus. So we just don't have a food or a clothing closet now. We have a fabric center that the ladies come in. They feel like they're walking to a Buckhead salon or Buckhead shop and being able to pick up items out in regard to getting ready for a job interview, or just some ladies show up to just with the clothes on their back, and a way to really provide dignity on their journey. So those have been real key parts of that. One of the areas, talking about the vocational center, which I've spent a lot of kind of my last 3 years as far as the programming. Our goals there are really to provide, one is awareness to the community that these programs are available with kind of no strings attached. We talk a lot about scholarships with the students. Nothing is free. We always let them know that there is a lot of sweat equity that goes into providing the programming. But it's the awareness and then the access, to see people's eyes when they walk into our vocational training center, everything done with a lot of passion and excellence. They're like, this is where I get to come to school. We're like, absolutely. And then the acceleration. So we have a whole full-time team that works along not only job readiness, but then also job placement, and then job just kind of retention, right? So what does it look in the day of life? I imagine most of us in the room, when we have a tough day, there's somebody that we call, right? And we say, hey, Michael had a tough day. Can you walk me through this? And, Mike would say, okay, well, let's walk through that. I've been through that. Here's what that looks like. A lot of people in our community that we serve don't necessarily have that phone call to make, or the wisdom that they're providing is not necessarily on point in regard to keeping that job. So just that mentoring and that long-term mentoring component of that. So our vocational trainings, anyway, a given day, we have our culinary arts program that now we partner with a group called Atlanta Breakfast Club. Any of you have ever been to the Atlanta Breakfast Club? So on the weekends, if you're around the aquarium, you'll look at a little shop over there called the ABC. And you'll look, and there'll be a line waiting for about 2 to 3 hours to get in to have waffles and fried chicken and waffles. And it's an amazing crafted cafe. They're going to have a pop-up on our campus that will launch the second week of February. And then they'll also have a 15-week culinary arts program. So we've had culinary arts probably for the last 5 years, but we're looking at a way to kind of revamp and crank up our program. So that's the culinary arts. And then we have a coding academy. So anywhere from, we'll eventually have cybersecurity, but we're on our cohort 3.0 now in regard to a coding academy. Over Christmas, it was exciting to get a text from one of our former students, Deborah, and she said, hey, Scott, just want to check in. Things are really well. She goes, I just want to let you know, I just had a $10,000 signing bonus with Accenture, and my new paycheck is going to read $85,000 a year. So here's a lady that came to us with a really tough background and looking for a first step and a new start. And I don't want to say it's about the money, but it is about a new start in that generational impact that she has. And the fact that she's still reaching back in and going, hey, just want to check in on my family and doing well. And here's what this looks like. Thanks for that opportunity. But that opportunity is not possible without, again, that collective impact, right? The community coming together, loving on each other, and finding ways to kind of open some of those doors and kind of on that. So want to share a couple things that we do as kind of a community, as a building out. So how I came to Christ, I was, Michael mentioned, I was born and raised in California, and I moved to DC, and I thought the reason I was moving to DC was another career opportunity. And really the reason I was moving to DC is to get out of my comfort zone, meet a gentleman by the name of Dan Britton. So Danny works with Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And a few years ago, Danny and my other buddy, Jimmy Page, wrote a book called One Word. And they also wrote a book called The Life Word. So what we've done now on campus is every year we'll kick off the year and we'll kind of go public with our one word, right? So it's really, really powerful because we do it with our students, we do it with our residents on campus, and we do it with our staff. And it seems really kind of disarming, like, hey, what's your one word for the year? But we really lean in. We lean into that, like just personally, what's stirring up in your heart about that one word? What's God's really trying to teach you? And then looking up and just going, God, what do you want? What parts of my life do you really want to kind of influence in? And then just kind of look around, go like, okay, what's really going to create growth? So I'll share some of the words that came out of this year. So, we sit down and we go public with our word, and then we kind of make a public declaration of that and put that on a big wall board, if you will. So Bruce Steele's word for the year is more, right? And inspired by, he said, the end of Schindler's List, when the guy just says, I could have done more. I could have done more. And he said it'll be the year that we'll continue to reach out and do more, right? How can we do more for our residents? How can we do more for our community? How can we do more for just the people that come into the campus? And we're looking for also opportunities for growth outside of Atlanta. So Bruce spent last week in Dallas. They'll launch a full-blown city of refuge in Dallas. So that the cities are really pretty excited about that. We have about 5 affiliates throughout the country that we're very much involved now as far as scaling the city of refuge model. But it's all about more. My word was traction, or is traction. And it was all about, how do we create more, I'd say accountability in my life in regard to anywhere from programming at work to just life goals to my marriage, and just kind of measuring through that and creating traction, making sure that, just not going through the motions, that we're really, making an impact on that. But as a campus, it's our first year that we've had kind of a life word for our campus, and or as far as a word for that. And the word this year is together, and really inspired by Psalm 133:1. It says, "How good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity," and just that whole togetherness. And that's what our campus, and then really that's what City of Refuge is all about. It's not just about just that providing light, hope, and transformation, but it's doing it as a collective impact story about the community coming together and us doing that shoulder to shoulder. And so that's been one of the big challenges. Wanted to share also just this is something that students really been wrestling with. A gentleman shared with me the other day. It's just talked about valuing people and just about our heartbeat as we serve the community and as we serve each other, and just that connecting with everybody. And how do we create a culture of trust? That was really the challenge. And these are the three things that he shared, and it just really has stirred up my heart in regard. He says the first thing he says to value. He says if we see people as weak, we'll find a way to help them, right? If we see people as broken, we'll fix them, right? And those are really both kind of challenging places to be, right? Because there's definitely a feeling of hierarchy there. But what I love though is he says if you see everyone as valuable, I'll find a way to serve them and love them. And I think that's, again, the heartbeat of City Refuge and where we want to move into as far as our framework and our model in regard to just finding ways to find value in everybody, leading with trust, and then just find a way to, serve, not to fix people, but to find a way to serve and to love and to come together as a community and on unity on that. So I'd love to open it up for some questions, but just wanted to share a little bit about what was going on with City Refuge. And again, it's such an honor to be here and be invited in to your men's group. And it's exciting to see us together and just be in a room together, even if it's with Zoom, but love the heartbeat. It's brothers to come in together to grow and to disciple together and be humble together and serve together and do life together. So thanks for that opportunity. But love to open up questions and about City of Refuge, about what we got going on, or any of the things that might be curious to you. Yep.
2 quick questions.
Yes.
I understand you're nonprofit. So how are you allowed, or are you allowed to preach the word? Given, I guess you take public money.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question is, since we're a nonprofit of faith, how do we be bold in our faith? How do we share the word? How do we, So I'll start out with, when you walk around our campus, it's pretty evident right away that, we're really fortunate with a lot of corporate sponsorships, but 95% of the money raised and what supports City Refuge is from either from foundations or individuals. But you'll look around, you'll see Coca-Cola, Chick-fil-A, UPS, and they know we're a faith-based organization, but we're very inclusive in regard to everybody welcome. And we share the gospel early and often in everything that we do with passion, excellence, dignity, integrity, but it's never a barrier to receive services on our campus. So again, we're sitting down again with the corporate, and they have their guidelines and sometimes some of the grants that we can't apply for because being an organization of faith is a barrier of that. But we don't hide that at all. Everywhere you walk around, and people, fascinating story. You walk around a lot of time on a tour, or people being involved. They go, it's fascinating is you never sit there and say, hey, we're a Christian-based organization, but it feels like everything that you do it with passion, excellence, dignity, integrity, and bringing light to Jesus and bringing opportunities to share the gospel. So so that's kind of how I don't want to say maneuvered it, but that's kind of how we've, for Bruce has been bold, from day one in regard to, hey, we couldn't do what we could do without God's favor, and we're doing all to glorify Him and to be able to open up the door to share faith and share really the true light, hope, transformation that God's gospel can bring.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let other people
Yeah.
wait.
Okay. Perfect. Great question, though. Thank you for that.
What's your breakout of people that you're serving? I mean, males, females,
Yeah.
kids?
Yeah, what's the breakout? What does our demographic look like, right? So I mentioned earlier that, as far as our housing component is women with children, right? So that we don't house any men currently on campus. But during the day, we're wide open, right? So the vocational training is open for both men and women. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we have 50% of our students, 50% of our students are men. So when you look at our recruiting model, for instance, for the vocational center, we really recruit what I'll say from kind of an inside out. And what that means is, first of all, the ladies that are on our campus, we make access and awareness to our programming in regard to vocational training in that next step. And then we'll have capacity in those classes, and then we'll reach out to the community. And that's a real mix, right? So some classes, you know, in the Napa Auto Training Center, sometimes that could be 60, 65% women. And this current class is, I think it's 70% men, 30% women on there. So each quarter, each time it's a little bit different. So at capacity, we're about 240 women with children on campus that will actually put a head on a pillow and call City Refuge home. But throughout the year, we'll serve close to 2,000 people on campus through different programming. Last year on our vocational training center, I hate that term, even with COVID, right? Even with COVID, the previous year we had job placements about 450 people. Last year with COVID, we placed 495 people into job starts. So so that's kind of a mix and max of that. So, but again, we're predominantly the community that we serve is African American. Probably 95% of the people served on our campus are people of color. Yeah, sure.
The job placement you all do, how many hold, how many keep, how many make it work? You got 80%?
Yeah, great question. So how many make it work, right? So the question for our Zoom team is, what's a job placement? What does that look like, right? Our goal, is one of our key markers is the 90 days, right? We want to, track people to that 90-day mark, because that seems like if you've been able to keep a job after that 90-day mark, it's really a kind of a key marker for long-term success on that. So depending on the training course, I'll talk about the Coding Academy. When we started out with a class of 25, we had 18 graduates. Of those 18 graduates, 16 are still employed in active coding roles. Our Napa Auto Training Center, it's a 15-week course. It's a 15-week people in that, and we're running 100% placement coming out of that program. And I'll say as retention, though, we're tracking probably in some of those roles about 65 to 70% retention. And I'll be really transparent. One of our biggest challenges going forward is part of our digital strategy of how do we track students, right? And my daughter's a freshman at our, we're going to some of the on-site, we went up to Ole Miss, and I'm sitting through the kind of the career counselor, and he said, "Oh, here's the careers that our students are going." And so all of a sudden, I went into City of Refuge mode. I'm like, "Well, how are you collecting that information, and how are you keeping that information?" And it was fascinating. He kind of looked at me and says, "Man, that's the toughest part of my job, because once people leave and they find that first job, they're not necessarily calling us back and going, 'Hey, still employed. Here's what I'm going. Here's challenges.'" So, but we have a lot of active programs in regard to how do we keep that retention. One of it is just building up community, right? So people feel safe and activated to come back and either have purpose of other people's journey, but then also providing some kind of incentives of kind of paying it forward with the students. So it's one of the biggest challenges I have in regard to some of the metrics and the goals is kind of that ongoing retention data, if you will. But right now, what is about a 70% retention after that 90-day component. So yeah.
I think my daughter participated in maybe my wife, I can't remember, but tell us a little bit about the volunteer opportunities there and the power of that young women, but what are also the opportunities for us? Yeah,
great question. So the question is about the opportunities. And, the other day I got asked, how do you measure success as a volunteer, right? So, because that's part of our team. And so that's a really, really awesome question, right? We started thinking through it. I said, really 3 things, right? So first is, would you come back, right? So when you come volunteer, would you kind of say, "Hey, I want to come back and do this"? The other is that would you tell a friend, right? Would you come back and say, "Hey, I not only go into City Refuge, but you got to come alongside with me on that." And then, sometimes long-term, just, you become part of like a City Lights member. But the first 2 are super critical, right? Would you tell a friend? And because we're in a tough place to get to, right? We're in the hood, right? We're in the inner city. We're in a tough part of town. We're in the toughest part of town in Atlanta. And with everything going on, it's one of those places like, really? You're going to come in here during the day, the night, at weekends, and then people come and they just kind of forget where they're at, right? And they're like, this is a really cool place to hang out. So, but what are those opportunities, especially with some of the COVID concerns, right? So one is some of the virtual opportunities with our vocational training is things like just helping somebody with a resume, right? Virtual job skills. We also do that with financial literacy And we found one of the blessings of COVID is that before we get into a big group and talk about financial literacy, well, everybody in this room probably would feel probably insecure talking about the finances, right? But one-on-one opens the door in a big way. So being able to walk somebody through on their journey as far as, how do you set up a checking account? What does it look like to save? What does it look like to give? What does it look like to be financial, just set up some of the things and create reserves on that. So there's opportunity to even do virtual impact in regard to anywhere, again, from resumes to walking through the mentorships of that. And then there's some just sweat equity stuff, right? Yesterday, a big day with MLK Day. A lot of people on campus helping us anywhere from getting classrooms ready. And some people obviously concerns about being close to others. So there's easy to put on a mask, and we call it the bucket brigade, and help get the classrooms ready for, to serve and to be real clean and get our campus really dialed in. And then there's, especially for the ladies, they love to come and serve at Fabric. And so what a night at Fabric looks like is to come, meet with one of the ladies, kind of get a need for what kind of outfits they love to do. They'll help them shop in the Fabric Center. They'll do a devotion, and then they'll finish out the night with a runway of their new outfits. And then, when my wife Lisa comes home from that night, she's more filled up than she ever could dream of giving. And so those are cool opportunities. So so there's opportunities in the kitchen, just kind of helping come alongside and prepare meals and serve meals and do that. So there's going, and we have on our website a list of actively each quarter opportunities to come out. And what I'd encourage you, just come out and you'll get all my contact information, but just take a tour. I know Brian and his team has been out and just something about seeing the campus and seeing the warmth and just feeling like, hey, I'm welcome here, right? So it doesn't matter if you're there to receive, programming or be part of a program or just come alongside us on that. So we love the volunteer team, and we talk a lot about together, but we talk a lot about the we are core, and we couldn't do it without the volunteer team and come alongside. That whole I'll go with you. I'll share a cool story about that, Michael. So one of the ladies, again, we're 60 days into COVID. We don't, everyone's kind of like double masked up, and it's pretty serious about that. One of the ladies is a volunteer, and she's, her husband has been very successful in Atlanta, and she's got somebody in her family that is definitely a health risk, right? So she had to be very careful. But one day she's walking up campus with one of our residents. Her name is Shine. And I'm like, where are you guys headed? She goes, oh, we're headed to the MARTA bus stop. And I'm like, oh, what do you got going on? She goes, well, tomorrow is Shine's first day. And she was really nervous about how to get to work. So we're going to do the bus route. So she feels really comfortable about that. And as they walked around, it was just so low key. And I'm just like, it blew me away. It still has one of the best visuals I've ever seen. It's that, what a great representation of I'll go with you. Really low key. But just kind of walk on. And so those opportunities happen at City Refuge all the time, right? So just in regard to how to create a connection, how to, just do life together and make it feel really normal and come alongside each other to take that next step. So yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, yes, sir.
So you mentioned you had more placements than you in the COVID year than you would have expected. I gotta believe with the impact on the culinary environment and all that sort of stuff, placing jobs, I would have thought it would have been pretty difficult. Training, your teaching classroom. How have you actually physically dealt with COVID?
Yeah. Well, it's somebody said, oh my gosh, COVID is, what's the day in life, Scott? And I pulled out my gym bag, right? And I said, wow, that's a great question. Let me walk you through my week, right? And for us on the team, was pretty, I don't want to say normal, right? But I mean, we didn't miss a beat in regard to coming together. So, and the people that we serve, they're in our campus and they're there. So what we pushed the brakes on really quickly was our vocational training, right? Because the community's coming in. The other was challenges with a lot of our teachers. They just had barriers that they couldn't teach in person. So we had to reset a lot with, I'll say, the vocational kind of framework of that. And then the other program was our daycare center. Just by law, we had to shut that down. But then we did a kind of a soft relaunch in that May timeframe. And so the first job fair that we did was pretty lightly attended. And then all of a sudden word spread fast that, hey, I feel really safe coming on the City Refuge campus, because intentionally social spacing, cleaning up the spaces, temperature checks, masks, and being able to do that. And then companies like UPS came and they were having a really hard time finding employees just because of how do you connect, right, in a virtual world. And they came out to our campus and they realized this is the way to do it. So partnering with Accenture and UPS, our job fairs in the last quarter of the year, over 100 people would come into our job fairs and feel super safe and super connected, and we're able to get into the job components of that. Part of the challenge, though, is we feel that there's just a magic of community and connecting in a classroom. And part of the barriers, I talked about the Napa class and about the success, but I'll talk about our class number 1.0, right? Our 1.0 recruited 15 students, graduated 2, placed 1. And when a student, the investment of a student is about $6,000, $7,000, that's not a good story to tell a donor. That's not a good story to share in regard to that return on investment. Because one of the critical paths that we changed was the mentoring role, and just walk alongside those students and making sure the class felt like a family and they were in it together. And so how do you do that in a virtual component? And so we're still a big believer of gathering students in a classroom, but a lot of times the instructors being virtual and providing the resources for that. So that's how we continue to adapt. And I'll be honest, we haven't figured it out yet. We every month, every quarter, we're learning a little bit different. And then some of the corporations, some of the opportunities, great professors just, don't feel comfortable coming on campus, not even our campus, but any campus. So just being able to, how do you create dynamic learning environments where the instructor's virtual, and then how do you augment that? So we've done some partnering with Deloitte. They've been really generous with some pro bono work, and just how do we create hybrids on that. But a lot of it is with our corporate engagements with the UPS and their teams really feeling safe on campus and the community feeling to come. Yeah. Yes.
So if you remember, what was your budget 10 years ago and what is it now?
Yeah. Well, I wasn't there 10 years ago, but I can tell you our budget now, where our goal is to really get to about a $10 million a year of programming, and then we'll do that in the next 2 years. So this year we finished out about $8.5 million, and about 95% of that goes directly towards programming. Yeah.
So with the vocational training and the placement, obviously getting the word out about the training that they're receiving, and I guess there has to be some marketing on your part for the City of Refuge name to have a reputation behind it. So what went into that, or what does go into that? I imagine it's ongoing.
Yeah, it is definitely ongoing. So yeah, Brian, it's a really good question, because our program is relatively new, right? So from a vocational training perspective, we had the Napa Center. The Napa Center was open about 4 years ago. And but then the active, as far as the dynamicness of what we'll call the hub, right? The innovation hub, which I call the Google Center, but cooler. So part of that is word of mouth, right? Is the ladies on campus learning about it, and them sharing the word with their friends and family, if you will. And we have a very active team that also reaches out to the community and attends different meetings and organizations, just to let them know that, that the awareness is part of a lot. It's about the awareness and the access. And then it's the community that how do you build that trust, right? That it's for real. I remember Kamaria, her husband now is on staff with us. Jonathan heads up our youth programming. But he said, yeah, Kamaria came home and was sharing about this coding academy that is a 15-week long program, and that it's scholarshiped in, and that these are the opportunities we'll partner with the Accentures, the EYs coming out of graduation. And he goes, there's no way that program is real. So they had to come down to campus and check it out and look around and go, yeah, it's for real, right? So, and then building that reputation over time. And then we do a lot of, as far as, believe it or not, a lot of the, social media outlets are pretty popular in the community. Everybody has a smartphone, and so reaching out and getting the community there. But a lot of it's just building up the reputation and connecting with churches and people in need, and not only people on our campus that have received program, but now every time coding students will go out and tell multiple friends, like, hey, this is for real. Here's my business card. I'm working with this organization now, and I've been here for 6 months. It's for real. So a lot of word of mouth, and a lot of friends telling friends, and the community just trusting City Refuge. Yeah. Yes, sir.
How did you? I just wanted to hear a little more about the classes, like how you come up with the classes, who the teachers are, how long they are.
Yeah, how do we do programming?
Are you looking to
Yeah.
add on?
Yeah, great question. And the day in the life of, so part of it is just, starting, Covey was big on starting with the end in mind, right? So let's start with the end in mind. The first thing we'll do is heat map of, where are the opportunities in Atlanta in regard to what we'll call generational, really good jobs, if you will. And then laying it out on the table of, our students have, interesting backgrounds, right? A lot of them don't have a college degree, obviously. A lot of them potentially have a record of some sort. And they have, barriers and challenges that have in the past have prevented them from really gainful employment. So sitting down with employers and kind of mapping that out and kind of going, hey, do you have a heartbeat? Are you unified in regard to being able to provide an opportunity in this area? And then if they'll say, yep, and then we'll look at the skill sets required for those vocational impact components and then start to map out programming there. And then how do we fund it? That's always the big challenge, right? So a lot of these are really cool programs, but how do you fund it? And so we've really been fortunate. I'll give you an example. The first Coding Academy, what was attractive to us was a group out of Louisville, Kentucky called Interapt. And what was intriguing for us was they were taking coal miners to coders in 6 months, right? And that felt really very similar to what some of the barriers and challenges that we had in the inner city of Atlanta. So it's just a real cool story. A gentleman that Interapt, Encore Gapol, met with Bruce Deal at a conference in California, and that really started that relationship. So it's been a really fruitful one for us. But the challenge there was that program was pretty expensive, right? So the investment per student is about $25,000 to put them through that 6-month journey on that. And as you can imagine, we talked about the budget earlier, right? When you're looking at, you can go through your budget pretty quickly when each class is almost $500,000. So what we've leaned into now is since we had such success with the initial program, we're able to now look at grants, look at other partners that will bring programming to us, and that it won't be such a drain on our budget. So we get much more creative in regard to having that funded in other ways than coming out of our actual budget. So, but it really starts with the end in mind, right? What's Atlanta hiring for? And then, how do we, do our students are capable of attaining those jobs? It's an amazing opportunity for us in Atlanta for that generational impact and true life transformation, because coding and opportunities in high tech, 3 years ago, employers would never dreamed of even looking at a student without a college degree. Today, they're not only willing, they're leaning into us and saying, hey, we really want to take a look at your students that don't necessarily have a college background, because we know we can teach them the skills and come alongside this, and they're aligned also from a mentoring perspective. So yeah, I hope that answers that question. So really starting with the end in mind, making sure that we're unified from a culture perspective, and then as we run into those bumps in the road, if you will, that we have a partnership that we can work through those together. Yeah.
Can I follow on that question?
Yeah.
Right down the road from you, essentially, Southern Regional Education Board, over the years, I've met with them. They probably have at least 8 to 10 technical adult education curriculum. And if you haven't met with that, it's the best I've seen probably countrywide. I mean, I work with throughout the entire South, work with employers, manufacturers. They got all these programs right there. You might want to sit down and talk to them because they got it all laid out. They got it figured out.
Yeah. That'd be phenomenal. Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, and that's why I talk about the collective impact. It's amazing. We'd love to connect with you on that. Yes, Brian. Yeah.
I'm just curious on your expansion plan. Are you going to stand the organizations up without any help, or are you partnering with other people in Dallas?
Oh yeah, great question. So look at our role in that. The question is really about the expansion and what role we'll play in those expansions. So this might give you an idea. Day in the life this afternoon, I'll meet with a group in Ohio, and they're looking at expanding into Ohio. So they're going to be the boots on the ground. It's their dream. It's their organization. So they're leaning into us in regard to kind of best practices, if you will, at City of Refuge Atlanta, and we're just kind of sharing the knowledge that we have there. So they'll be responsible for all their own fundraising and their staffing, and we believe that, like in Dallas, what works in Dallas is going to be very different than what works in Atlanta, and what works in Atlanta is very different than what works in Baltimore. And people, that have, really kind of that, those roots in those cities and the passion for those cities can do a phenomenal. So we're not trying to take our team and go to other cities and tell them how to do it. We're just being a resource and being a guide, and what we've learned along the road, and being able to maybe share some of those heartaches and lessons learned, if you will, to be a guide on that. But yeah, but it's all, they'll be run independently. They'll have their own boards. They'll have their own fundraising. Then they'll have their own programming. Yeah, Brian.
You mentioned the 4 different areas that you all served at the start of your tour, and I definitely recommend the tour.
Yeah.
It's an amazing facility, but there's a diagram with a statistic there that talks about the 4 areas. I don't know if you remember the stat. off the top of your
Yeah,
head,
they're in the Brookings
but it's-
Institute.
but it's
Yeah,
mind-blowing.
yeah.
I mean, about how you have to have all 4 of those and what that does to your success rate.
Yeah, great point. So early on, right, term like collective impact, with Bruce, a little backstory on that. So when Bruce went to share kind of the vision with some of the initial donors at City of Refuge, and he talked about, hey, we want to provide housing, we want to try youth development, we want to try vocational training, we want to do health and wellness. The donor community and the experts in the field would kind of say, oh, no, you got to focus on one thing, right? So you don't want to get spread too thin, and you got to focus on one thing. And so Bruce, in his resolute way, says, yeah, let's focus on one thing. We're going to focus on life transformation. And you need all those 4, because Bruce saw firsthand that if you did housing, right, it's okay, housing is kind of an immediate need. But really, what some people really need is vocational training, right, to have long-term success on that. And then the other needs would come up and said, hey, but what do you do about the kids? What, as far as the health and wellness of the kids? And then what do you do about your health and wellness? So all those 4 components, through kind of just that sweat equity that the team was seeing, became evident. And that's why Bruce landed on those 4. But then interesting is the Brookings study came out years later and said, hey, interesting thing that if you miss one of these 4, you have like a 93% chance of staying in poverty for the rest of your life. But if you nail all these, that you'll have like a 90% chance of getting out of poverty. So those kind of more of, I'll say the serendipity or God's will on that. It was just, I say a lot of it is early on, ready, fire, aim, and trying to figure out what to learn. And then those 4 pillars of just being like, hey, get it. Because I'll give you a first-hand experience of that. One of the culinary arts students, is just a super energetic gal, and she just just thrilled to be in the class. Day 2 into that, she came up just heartbroken. She says, I'm gonna have to drop out. We're like, what's going on? She says, well, my newborn, our child care has fallen through. Our family member cannot help out. We're like, come on, no problem. Let's take a walk. She goes, where are we going? I go, I want you to meet the lady from Feed My Lambs. So walk up literally, 50 yards from our culinary arts program. And she met Miss Jackson. Miss Jackson gives her a hug and says, no problem, bring your little one to us tomorrow. We get good. So she, so those barriers of like, oh, take a MARTA, drop a kid off, day 2, day 3 into that, you run out of juice pretty quickly. So those 4 key pillars, but we live those every day, right? Seeing those barriers and those pathways to opportunities are super critical. And that's our whole goal is to talk about the dynamicness of, how do you, change the programming out? It's, what works to open those doors for the new pathway. And again, just being super humble, I realize that we don't have all the answers, but we got a teachable spirit. And how do we continue and help knock down some of those barriers and build bridges? Okay, Michael?
Personal vein, number one, just to tie it all together, this past Sunday, Matt Stone did a sermon on, kind of looking at your skills, attributes, blessings, your passion, and then, a need around you. You said you came home after, that stint or temporary, time at City of Refuge, and she said, it's an answer to my prayers for you. You were on a path as an executive nationwide. I read you were Dale Carnegie National Sales Talk Champion, obviously career, professional focus, but mentioned, your faith was an important part of your pathway. Any simple insights on how that all came together, how you were nudged, led, discerned what God was doing?
First of all, I'm shocked. How did you find all this out? Because I didn't even know it. I'm like, that's cool. I'll claim that Dale Carnegie now. But anyway, so no. So, it's an interesting question because I read a lot about purpose, right? And I think it's a burden, right? I'll say that what I mean by burden is when we try to find like, quote unquote, our purpose, right? And because that, I joke with my daughter, I'm like, oh, I'm 57 years old, still trying to figure out, what my quote unquote purpose is. But I think I just encourage people to show up, right? To show up and serve and figure out, and then things will come out of that will just be like, oh my gosh, this is how I'm wired. And what I figured out how I'm really wired is just magical about seeing people's light turn on and go, I can do this, right? And that's what, and I didn't realize that was quote unquote my, my gifting, but I'd love to come alongside teams and find pathways for opportunities, and that's what lights me up. But I couldn't have told you that 3 years ago until I just kept showing up and going, oh yeah, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out that program. And I think what I mean by that burden of feeling like, oh, it fits in this perfect box, and I just encourage people to, whatever that is, right? Just figure out ways where you can go with somebody like that. I'll go with you. And that's why I love that verse so much. And 1 Samuel is just finding opportunities and put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And I think God, you'll show up in really cool ways. And it keeps us super humble, right? But for me, it's, if I was trying to figure out the magic, I think I'd be pretty stuck. But other than just showing up and finding ways to come alongside and say, yeah, let's go try it, right? And go for it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, just finding ways to, roll up our sleeves and sweat together and together and laugh together, and but just put yourself in a lot of opportunities where you get to try be around cool people and try new things. Yeah. Yes.
Can you talk more about your walk with Christ? Have you always been in church?
Yeah.
Something happened when you went to the City of Refuge, but I think there was something going on before.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. My walk, and I think I mentioned a little bit of. I was, born and raised California, and grew up in a Lutheran church, and around church a lot, but not really around Jesus a lot, I would say. And then opportunity to move to DC, and it was just a new path, a new beginning of that. And ran into a guy that was key with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, but we hung out together at a golf tournament one day, and he just kind of took me on, I think, as his project, and just kept finding ways to invite me to different men's groups and different Fellowship of Christian Athlete events, and so that was all of a sudden, the scales of my eyes just coming off, and that was really around. I was 24 years old to come to Christ, right? And that's always a popular conversation when you come home and let mom and dad know that you found Jesus, and they're looking at you like, oh my gosh, you always knew Jesus. But so it was really, I'd say, just God kicking my butt a little bit and moving me out of California for a reason of not a career, but really to kind of connected with men of faith. And then I got plugged into 4 guys that we used to hang out every Friday afternoon, and they were discipling me and kind of walking alongside that. And they're still, we call each other now the 4 horsemen. We still do life together, and it's fun that's why I was talking about the one word, that every time we do that, I remember, my relationship with Danny and Jim, and just that as far as that opportunity, them pouring into me. And now it's a way that we can open up a door and kind of do life together again. So, yeah. But yeah, that was, came to Christ when I was 23, 24 years old. And, on the journey to DC, and he had bigger plans to, connect them, as far as the scales coming off my eyes, and finding that relationship with Jesus. Yeah. Cool. All right. And I'll be around, guys. I'm here in Dunwoody, so love to connect with you if you guys want to grab a cup of coffee, and really encourage you taking that next step. We're about 60 days away for a virtual run. I think we're all going to be virtualed out this year, right, with runs and everything else. But we do our City of Refuge run really that March 20th. So our link will go live later this week. We're part of the Cathedral event this week, St. Philip's Cathedral. We'll be renovating our 180 kitchen. So tomorrow there'll be some news posts in regard to what the inside of our kitchen looks like. It's been serving a lot of meals for the last 15 years. So it's in dire need of getting rid of some of the duct tape and renovating that. So after that, you'll see a lot of postings about City Refuge, about the Refuge Run. But I'd love to give you a cook's tour. Come on down. And we've got, what I say about some really cool space, our vocational training center, great to come down and do a Bible study connection. The Atlanta Breakfast Club Cafe opens second week of February. So we'll have some amazing food experience again on campus, just to come and grab a meal and work out of the hub and for the day. But come on out and see us, and love to walk you around. So yeah, Brian. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. All right, Zoom question.
Yeah, we got one more on here. It's given the success that you've had here in Atlanta, have you considered exploring having additional campuses here in Atlanta?
Yeah, additional campuses. We have Atlanta South, so current expansion in the South, and we're always open for different communities. I know Athens right now is looking at exploration of some ideas, in regard to some of the City of Refuge modeling of that. But I'll say one of the big initiatives, I think from a Bruce Deal perspective, is we'll be meeting with other cities, and just because he's got such great, again, intuition of, you know, some of the barriers, what works well in regard to that. So this year, though, in 2021, you'll see some big announcements as far as in Dallas in regard to City of Refuge, and also continuing some of this stuff in Baltimore. But this year, again, Athens has shown some interest as far as some of the impact in Athens. So again, whatever role we can play. Again, I mentioned it, I'm hosting a group today from Ohio to explore through the model, and you know, is it a good fit for them? So yeah, excellent question. But yeah, always open for that, and you know, kind of share lessons learned and coming out and see it firsthand on our campus. Any other?
Scott, you mentioned 6 cities, so I heard Dallas.
Yeah, Baltimore, Chicago, Ohio has got part of one, so I think that's, yeah.
Scott, you said the minimum stay is 6 months. What gets you, how can you stay longer?
Yeah, so the question is minimum stay 6 months. We're a big believer with, say, what our the City Refuge housing. We talk about the 180 a lot, right? The 180 represented is kind of a practical and also metaphorical, right? That 180 of life transformation. But we're very intentional about, hey, beginning, middle, and end of that, right? So connect with your case manager. So it's not just a shelter. You're here for a purpose, right? Purpose is really go from that moment of very dependence to independence, and then it's beautiful then when there becomes an interdependence with and being part of more of that community. But every story is different, right? Every lady's situation is a little bit different. So a lot of ladies will be with us for up to 2 years, right? So it's not like, hey, after 6 months, you got to move out, but it's just more of having that, again, a game plan and a roadmap on that. With our ladies from House of Cherith, right, which is on campus, some of those ladies have been with us for up to 3 years. So again, that's much more of a dynamic in regard to extending the period of time. So everybody's story, Brian, is a little bit different, but it's not a, hey, on the 181st day, you got to move out, right? But it's just more of being able to create kind of a framework of intentionality and a journey on that mission. So, yeah.
And is it a primarily female staff? If you're everyone that's staying is female, I imagine a lot of them are going to come from abusive situations, so there could be issues with male staff. Is it a primarily female staff? Or?
It's a real mix, yeah. So the question is it primarily a female staff? And obviously the key components of housing, it's predominantly female on there. And but the male, it's just, you know, we're really, really intentional about the male that are on our staff and how do we build trust on that? Because we're expanding a lot in regard to our male programming. In early part of 2022, we'll open what we call the 345, which is about 100 yards from our current City Refuge campus. And we're renovating currently a historic African-American hotel that will house up to 33 men. A lot of people, I'll say returning citizens from, you know, coming out of prison, youth in the area that will be part of our programming at City Refuge. So that will be, again, predominantly men that will be, you know, staffing that. But it's a real mix, Brian, to be honest with you. So again, the day in life at vocational training, it's probably a 50-50 mix, men and women on staff. And then certain programs are more heavily women. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Guys, well, it's been an absolute joy to be with you this morning. Let me finish out. Let me just share, you know, with the Martin Luther King Day yesterday, we have, you know, a lot of opportunities to serve together. But when you do that tour, there's a quote on a wall, and I just kind of wanted to share that with you. And again, I'd love to connect with you, being part of your community here. Love to, again, grab a coffee or do a tour with you on City Refuge. But when you walk through there, talk a lot about the beloved, right? So we're right at 1300 Joseph E. Boone. Dr. King's house, time of his assassination, it's about a mile from our campus. And when you read about Dr. King, he talked a lot about the beloved community. Impactful in regard to his dream, his mission was to have this diverse community on purpose and just being able to do life shoulder to shoulder. But this verse, we claim this on the wall, says, you are beloved. Dr. King writes, take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. And I think that's kind of our story at City of Refuge, right? People come and trying to figure out what that next step is. But not just people in the community looking for programming. It's also our church family coming together and trying to figure out, hey, what's the next step to serve, volunteer, to be part of this community on purpose, right? So encourage us to, love to have you out, take a tour, and just kind of take a behind the scenes look at what's going on. But I also invite you in to be part of the story. We need a lot of help in regard to the journey and doing that collectively together. So with that, again, thanks for trusting us an opportunity to come together, and just love the fact that you guys are coming together as brothers in Christ and encouraging each other, because it's something about being together, right? And that we've missed out in the last year. So thanks again, guys, virtually. So nice to see you, and we'll look forward to connecting here in the Dunwoody. So all right, thanks, guys. Yeah. And I brought roll just a little bit of our programming, and then links to our website stuff. So I'll leave some of that with you guys. So thanks, Brian. All yours.
If they want to take a tour, go through that. Or
Just connect with me directly. Yeah.
can I give out your cell phone?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Watch out, there's
I love it.
No, Lisa told me that's the best way to get a hold of me.
Again, Scott, thank you very much for being here. Amazing story, and I think it aligns a lot, guys, with what we talk about on Tuesday mornings and what we've been talking about over the last year. So I would like to thank, I think we might have some first-time visitors maybe in either on Zoom or here in the room. So if you are, thank you very much for being here. Stop and talk to anybody wearing a name tag. We'd love to get your information, get you on the listserv. Also, Wagon just told me that he hasn't been getting Best Man emails for a while now. So if there's anybody else out there who for some reason has fallen off the list, or Andy purposely put you on the do not contact list, yeah, if you've been excommunicated, exactly. Let us know. We'll make sure we get those to you. Typically, they come out on our emails come out on Sundays. It's usually got the Zoom link and any of the other pertinent information for the week. So no big announcements. We're going back to regular programming next week. I believe Phil, you've got next week. Yep, Phil's got next week. So same bat time, same bat channel. And I'm going to turn it over. I think Andy's going to close us in prayers. Did anybody else have anything for the good and welfare of the group before Andy closes us out? All right, Andy, all you.
Let's pray. Lord God, we thank you for your servant Scott, for the light he shines with the City of Refuge and the work that you're doing through the transformation clearly evidenced. Lord God, we know you are the transformer. Lord God, we look for breakthrough in our lives, for transformation. Even though we walk with you, we know you have more for us. Lord God, call us to be the best man we can be, the best man you want us to be. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen.